Hello and welcome back to our discussion of human rights. Today we shall be focusing on part 2 and let's see how it goes. Last time in part 1 we talked about Article 20, Article 21 and Article 22 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. But today we are focusing on Articles 23 to 24. Article 23 of the Constitution talks about the protection of personal liberty. Personal liberty. Have you ever known that you have liberty? Anything that we refer to as personal is about you and nobody else. And so Article 23, Clause 1 reads, No person shall be deprived of personal liberty except in any of the following cases. A. Execution of the sentence or order of a court, whether established for Uganda or another country, or of an international court or tribunal in respect of a criminal offense of which that person has been convicted, or of an order of a court punishing the person for contempt of court. B. In execution of the court order of a court made to secure the fulfillment of any obligation imposed on that person by law. C. For the purpose of bringing that person before a court in execution of the order of a court, or upon reasonable suspicion that that person has committed or is about to commit a criminal offense under the laws of Uganda. D. Clause 1D. For the purpose of preventing the spread of an infectious or contagious disease, in the case of a person who has not attained the age of 18 years, for the purpose of the educational welfare of that person. In the case of a person who is or is reasonably suspected to be of unsound mind or addicted to drugs or alcohol, for the purpose of the care or treatment of that person or the protection of the community. G. For the purpose of preventing the unlawful entry of that person into Uganda, or for the purpose of effecting the expulsion, extradition, or other lawful removal of that person from Uganda, or for the purpose of restricting that person while being conveyed through Uganda in the course of the extradition or removal of that person as a convicted prisoner from one country to another. Or H, as may be authorized by law in any other circumstances similar to any of the cases specified in paragraphs A to G of this clause. And then clause 2 provides that a person arrested, restricted, or detained shall be kept in a place authorized by law. Clause 3, a person arrested, restricted, or detained shall be informed immediately in a language that the person understands of the reasons for the arrest, restriction, or detention, and of his or her right to a lawyer of his or her choice. Clause 4. A person arrested or detained for the purpose of bringing him or her before a court in execution of an order of a court, or B. upon reasonable suspicion of his or her having committed or being about to commit a criminal offense under the laws of Uganda, shall, if not earlier released, be brought to court as soon as possible, but in any case not later than 48 hours from the time of his or her arrest. And then clause 5A states that where a person is restricted or detained, A, the next of kin of that person shall, at the request of that person, be informed as soon as practicable of the restriction or detention. B, the next of kin, a lawyer and personal doctor of that person, shall be allowed reasonable access to that person. And C, that person shall be allowed access to medical treatment, including at the request and at the cost of that person, access to private medical treatment. Clause 6A. Where a person is arrested in respect of a criminal offense, the person is entitled to apply to the court to be released on bail, and the court may grant that person bail on such conditions as the court considers reasonable. In the case of an offense which is triable by the High Court as well as by the subordinate court, if that person has been remanded in custody in respect of an offense for 60 days before trial, that person shall be released on bail on such conditions as the court considers reasonable. And then clause 6C provides that in the case of an offense triable only by the High Court, if that person has been remanded in custody for 180 days before the case is committed to the High Court, that person shall be released on bail on such conditions as the court considers reasonable. Article 23, Clause 7 provides that a person unlawfully arrested, restricted, or detained by any other person or authority shall be entitled to compensation from that person or authority, whether it is the state or an agency of the state or other person or authority. Can I repeat that? Article 23(7). A person unlawfully arrested, restricted, or detained by any other person or authority shall be entitled to compensation from that other person or authority, whether it is the state or an agency of the state or other person or authority. 8. Where a person is convicted and sentenced to a term of imprisonment for an offense, any period he or she spends in lawful custody in respect of the offense before the completion of his or her trial shall be taken into account in imposing the term of imprisonment. And then 23(9) provides that the right to an order of habeas corpus shall be inviolable and shall not be suspended. So you see, Article 23 is quite long, and it's all about access to justice and human rights. It's really revealing a number of areas concerning the arrested persons in respect of a criminal offense, their right to have a lawyer, their right to have medical attention, their right to be committed to court, to be brought to court within 48 hours. And then, quite a number of aspects that we have read apply in this regard. And therefore, despite the fact that circumstances may determine a number of things and court may determine a number of things, it's only fair that everybody respects the constitution that is in place and be able to critically analyze these articles and the clauses embedded therein, so that we are careful not to break, in quotes, we are careful not to contravene any of the articles or clauses of the Constitution. And therefore, it's a fundamental right for people to access justice. It's a fundamental right for government to heed and to respect the provisions of the Constitution. Whoever you are, wherever you are, this is applicable to all of us. And for today, let me stop on Article 24. Respect for human dignity and protection from inhuman treatment. No person shall be subjected to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. I can't say more than that. Maybe just to repeat. Article 24 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Respect for human dignity and protection from inhuman treatment. No person shall be subjected to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Take a moment to think about that. Situations where people have been subjected to many forms of torture or cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. For whatever reason, we shall see in the near future, there is no instance where torture is allowed. And therefore, if we are to respect human dignity and protection and ensure protection from inhuman treatment, then it means that each of us has a call to let people understand that Article 24 exists and that nobody should be found to go against or to contravene or to break any of the statements, any of the lines, any of the words that are provided for in this Constitution, in this article. The closing question is, what do you want? If the law is clear, if the parent statute of this country is clear, what do you want by deciding, or what are you aiming at when you decide to go against what is provided? I mean, what is heard? If the Constitution is saying in Article 24 that no person shall be subjected to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, is that too hard to understand? Can you define a person? Simply put, a person is you and me. Okay? So, you and me shall not be subjected to any form of torture. If you have some time, you can look for the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act of 2012 in the laws of Uganda and read more about torture, but we shall explain it someday. Yeah? So do not subject anyone, your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband, your relative, your friend, or anyone, even if you don't know them. Never subject them to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman, degrading. We are born free and equal. We all have rights. No one is above the other. Treat people with dignity. Treat them with proper and reasonable and mindful thoughts. Because today it's me, tomorrow is somebody else. Today it's you, tomorrow is somebody else. Who deserves better? Who deserves better? The principle is everybody deserves better. So let's reflect on these words and on these two articles that we have looked at. You can go back as many times as you can just to make sure that you bring out what we have looked at. And together we make a better world where human rights and fundamental freedoms of everyone, everywhere, can be promoted, respected, upheld, realized. For God and my world I speak.